Hello everyone, this is in continuation with the last video. So in this video I'm going to teach you about leftmost and rightmost derivation. Leftmost derivation is also known as LMD and rightmost derivation is also called as RMD. If in the derivation process you're replacing all the leftmost variables in each step, then you can call it as LMD. And if you're replacing all the rightmost variables in each step, then we are going to call it as RMD. Let's have a look at this example. I'll explain what is LMD and RMD using this example. So this is similar to the previous example, E plus E into E and ID, and this is the required string that you have to generate. Let's start with LMD first. So if you were to derive the string using leftmost derivation, let's see how it will be derived. This is my starting symbol E. Leftmost derivation, because there is only single symbol, I'm going to replace E with, let's say, E plus E. You also have to mention the substitution rule using E plus E. Now I have two options. Either I can replace this E or I can replace this E. But because this is leftmost derivation, I will always be replacing the leftmost variables. So this is my leftmost variable. This E, I'm going to replace it with ID plus E. So using the substitution rule, E derives ID. When I move from left to right, this is the next symbol that I see. So this E, I'm going to replace it with E into E. This is using the rule E into E. Now move from left to right. This is the next variable that you see. This E, I'm going to replace it with ID. Using the rule E derives ID. And this E is the last E. So this will also be replaced using ID. Using the production rule, E derives ID. Let's draw the parse tree also simultaneously. This is E. I replaced this E with E plus E. Then this E was replaced with ID. This E got replaced with E into E. Then you replace this with ID and you replace this with ID. So you're moving from left to right, hence this is the parse tree of LMD. Let's see how will you do it for RMD. So when you start the derivation for RMD, again we are going to use the starting symbol E. Now this E, let's say I replace it with E plus E. This is using the substitution rule E plus E. Now when you are writing RMD, you are going to read from right to left. So this is the first E that you're going to replace. So if you observe the string, from the right hand side, you want ID. If you observe, you want ID, then you want multiplication, then ID, then plus and ID. So I'll keep this E as it is. This, I'm going to replace it with E into E. Because if I replace this with ID, then I will get E plus ID, which is not the required string. So E is replaced by E into E. Then I'll take this E and replace it with ID. Using the rule E derives ID. Then when you go from right to left, this is the next E. So replace it with ID again. Using the substitution rule, E derives ID. Finally, when I go from right to left, this is the last E which needs to be replaced. So this is called as using the rule E derives ID. This is using RMD. So the only difference is you start from rightmost letter and go towards left, whereas in LMD you start from the leftmost letter and go towards right. Let's draw the pass tree. So I started with E, then E got replaced with E plus E. This E got replaced with E into E. This got replaced with ID, ID, and ID. So this is the pass tree of RMD. I hope you have understood LMD and RMD. Thank you.